It's time for the Lovable Me Show. Based on the award-winning book series, I Am a Lovable Me. Get ready to have some fun learning with Lovable, our resident enlightening bug. Are you ready? Close your eyes and let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Now open them. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Lovable Me Show. I'm Sharon Penchina, your host and author of the award-winning I Am a Lovable Me books for children. With children's mental health issues at an all-time high, it becomes more important than ever for us to find ways to raise more resilient children. So what can you do as a parent and caregiver that you may not already be putting into action? Well, our special guest today will teach us how to raise gritty kids with 10 simple hacks when speaking to your kiddos. But before I invite her on, let's do a quick review of how to teach your children to adopt a positive internal dialogue using affirmations. You know, our internal dialogue has more to do with our success than any other factor. So let's start with an affirmation. Teach your child to say an affirmation each day and get the benefits of doing it along with them by saying it together. It's a great way for you to bond with your child and develop positive habit yourself. It's a perfect way to start your day and to start theirs on a positive note. So saying something as simple as today is a great day is all you need to do to get the ball rolling. Start out with something simple and to the point, and eventually you can move towards affirming more specific personal goals. Now, repetition is key to forming behaviors, habits, and beliefs. So please make sure to get your little ones repeating their affirmation throughout the day. And as a result of this repeated dialogue, the affirmation will ultimately become embedded in their subconscious mind, where it will act in accordance with what they've affirmed. The subconscious mind is goal-oriented and does not discern whether or not the information or affirmation spoken is a positive or negative one. So be sure to help support your child when it comes to repeating their affirmation so that it is clear, concise, and very positive. Now, make sure you make it a family affair by having the whole family join in. Have fun with affirmations. You can do them first thing in the morning before your child gets up out of bed, and do them together at mealtime, in the evening, and at bedtime when they're ready to be tucked in at night. A nighttime affirmation that you might want to use is something such as, I fall asleep easily and I have peaceful dreams. Now, since our words truly matter and what we say to ourselves and each other can have the deepest implications, here's a great quote from Rachel Walkin. She says, be mindful when it comes to your words. A string of them that don't mean much to you may stick with someone else for a lifetime. Now, with that said, let me tell you a little bit about my special guest, Eloise Grobbelaar. She's been here before and she's back again. She's a mom and a teacher with a direct focus on emotional intelligence, autism, and various behavior approaches. She is also a certified parent educator, team teach tutor, relaxed kids coach, and has a postgraduate certificate in autism. Her expertise spans almost 20 years working with various children with different needs. And she incorporates neuroscience research in her approaches and her strategies when supporting children's emotional intelligence. and their development. Now, this forms the basis of her teaching, whether she's in class with her students or teaching parents and professionals in a workshop. Eloise, I'm so happy to have you back again because we had such a great time last time you were here.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm excited to be back.
So if you can just tell us a little bit about how you came to these 10 hacks and what prompted that, just to give us a little bit of the backstory, that would be great.
Great. I'm always observing parents and children, how they interact and what the dynamics are, and not in a judgmental way, obviously, because I'm not a perfect parent at all, but because it's really interesting to see. And I take my children swimming every Friday afternoon. They have lessons, and it's very interesting to see. Now, Friday afternoons, obviously, is when people are starting to feel really tired, and that's when I see a lot of negative interactions. So I was looking at what I was seeing and thinking, if we could just summarize some of the basics and very easy, not this but this, just adapt. So we're not saying what you're feeling is wrong and what the child's feeling is wrong, but just to adapt what you're saying in a way that there's no shame and blame. So there was about 2 weeks ago, there was a boy who forgot to put his wet stuff in the plastic bag, and his mum said, "Why are you always forgetting this?" And then went on to say, "You idiot." And just really upset me. But she was clearly feeling very frustrated. And I saw a mum with a toddler. The brother was having a swimming lesson, and the toddler was having a meltdown. And she just said, "Stop it right now, stop it." And then got up and said, "What's wrong with this child?" Clearly, I think, when we just, these words just come flying out of our mouths before we even know it. And like the quote you had, it comes out just a string of words, but actually it really affects the people who it's spoken over. And I always, in these situations, just find my heart rate going up and struggling to hear what my friend's saying. And I think it's just because I've been spoken to like that, and I know what it feels like, that feeling of you're just not good enough and you're just not getting it right. It's all your fault.
Yeah.
I have a favorite quote by Peggy O'Mara, which just explains the power of words for me very well, similar to yours, that says the way we talk to our children become their inner voice. And for me, that was certainly true. That lack of confidence and not thinking that you can become much at all because of the words that were spoken over you. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned all of this because I think, well, I think a lot of us grew up, hearing those same kinds of comments from our parents. And, generations ago, they just didn't have the awareness or the tools, to approach it differently. And it was sort of commonplace. So a lot of us, experience that. And so, I mean, there's, it really seems like, the awareness that you're bringing forth is, the awareness of the child and how those words are being integrated and just the deep implications there, but also the fact that, we as parents and caregivers aren't perfect. And, we may have had, a very rough day and sometimes our filtering system or our awareness isn't really present in the moment for us to show up any better than we just showed up. But I also think that there are times where parents are also acting in accordance with sometimes what they think in terms of the people around that may be judging what's going on with
That's right.
their interactions with their children, and they're trying to nip it in the bud, and it's really, maybe not taking the best approach at the time.
That's right, and not having the effect that they were hoping to get either. So the toddler was just crying for longer and much louder than he was before, and the little boy, the boy that the mum was speaking to, he just looked at her blankly. He wasn't saying, "Oh yes, of course I should be doing this," So I think we, like you say, we have defaults when we get stressed, but if we start to just become really mindful of what we say and how we say it as much as possible, then that will become our norm. It's just teaching our brain new pathways, isn't it? So yeah,
absolutely. We're our focus today may be in part helping our children develop these positive habits. And again, keeping in mind that their brain has only developed to a certain point and there's only a certain capacity for what we're talking about. But at the same time, it's we as the parent and caregiver developing positive habits too, through an awareness and then the repetition of implementing the types of things that you're going to share with us today. Yes. So with that said, I know you talk about encouragement and not just praise. So can you speak to that?
Yes. So I think praise is easy, but it's also a lazy way of giving a child feedback, because with praise, all we really need to do is say things like good girl or clever boy or well done, and not have to do much more. But the result of that is that a child develops an idea that it's only when I've completed the work to this standard that I'm okay. So when my work is good, I am good, or when the result is good, I'm good, which can result in our children becoming people pleasers, because my value comes from the outside, really. But encouragement works completely in the opposite way. So encouragement helps to develop a really strong inner confidence. So it focuses on the process that a child was using, or the strategies, or the learning that took place, or the reflection, or the effort, the perseverance. It's those things. So you would say things like, well done, that was really good thinking there. Those are great ideas there. Well done for persevering. That was tricky to finish that puzzle, but you just kept going. Or even when they're not finished, you can already say, well done. That's, you are just carrying on regardless and coming back to it. It's those kind of things that develop inner confidence, because it helps them to realize that every little step they take has value and worth. It's not just a really good end result.
Yeah, so you're emphasizing more of a focus on the effort that they put forth.
That's right, and that then doesn't make you as worried about making mistakes either, because mistakes are just extra steps giving you feedback on how to change things, instead of it being big hurdles that cannot be overcome. So children are less likely to give up. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I like it.
And I see that, sorry, Sharon, we see that with our students all the time. The moment you start to shift the way you speak to them with regards to their effort, instead of just finished results, it just immediately starts to impact. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me it would be a great motivator, you know.
Hmm.
And so, how would you describe? You talk about narration supporting anxiety.
Hmm. So I am hearing from more and more mums and dads saying that their children are quite anxious. So this is becoming something that we hear more about. We know that the brain has two areas, the left and the left and right area, and the left area is the area that's more in charge of the logical thinking, making decisions. It's where you keep your lists, and you can you use your vocabulary to name emotions and perceptions and so on. Where the right side is where you feel your emotions really strongly, and you see images instead of being able to label them. You just have these visuals. And what's interesting is the right side is also more connected to the amygdala that we were talking about that earlier. When the amygdala fires, that's when you have fight, flight, freeze, or faint. So your right side of your brain has very strong connections with that. And as the brain develops, you still have you have the right side more mature than the left side. So the logical side is still lagging behind, basically. So with narration, you are literally forming the link between those two sides of the brain. You are helping them to talk to each other. So narration is telling stories. It's labeling the feelings, sequencing the story, what happened, coming up with possible solutions, and that calms the fears or the worries. So you would, if your child has something specific that happened to them, maybe they had an experience in nursery or kindergarten or whatever, that left them feeling very upset, then what you would do is you will ask, okay, what happened? How did you feel? What happened next? So that's sequencing it. Why does that make you feel worried, or why did it make you feel upset? What would you want to change about that? How can you be prepared for the next time? And that can be just a story that you tell together, and you can repeat it a few times, or if you have to, you can make it into a little booklet and be able to read through it like you would any other book, make characters, draw in it. Yeah.
Would you recommend also perhaps telling a story of, either whether it's your personal experience or you knew of a little boy or a little girl who such and such, whether it was something that you fabricate or an actual story that you can relate to them? Is that helpful also, do you think?
Oh, definitely. Stories are incredibly powerful. I think that's one of the reasons why reading with your child before they go to sleep is so impactful on on their identities and their self-confidence, because stories help to make sense of things. So even if you hear about someone else's experiences, or like you said with the affirmations as well, the subconscious doesn't care whether it's my own experience or someone else's experience. I can take that and use it as a strategy. My brain can use it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very powerful, like you said with the affirmations. It sinks into the subconscious, and that's where the confidence then builds. Yeah,
That's good. What do you recommend, or is there a hack that you have specific to disciplining children in terms of, discipline with connection? You mentioned connection and using reflection. What does that mean?
so we we definitely need to discipline our children. There's no doubt about it. But discipline doesn't mean punish. Discipline actually means guiding and teaching, coaching. We all have found ourselves in coaching positions if we have children. That's what we do. Are you referring to the bit where I talk about the I statements?
You know, I just did a little, kind of surfing through your material, and I noticed that you reference, disciplining with connection and reflection. I thought I'd have you go more deeply.
No, that's fine. I can talk about that. So I think when one of the first things to do is, when you are in a situation where discipline is needed, is not to start with you, because if we start with you, we have those words flying out of our mouths and we have no control over it, because you are never doing what I'm telling you to do. How many times have I asked you, and so on and so forth. But if we start with I statements, then we remove that natural tendency to shame and blame our kids. So we'll say, I'm really upset because you're not putting away your crayons. But because I've only said I'm upset and I'm stating the facts, that leaves a possibility to then say, to negotiate or think about next steps. So I'm upset because you didn't put away your crayons. So what can you do? Or I'm really upset because you didn't follow my instructions. We are now late for school. So what can you do? So, it's not you are just terrible, it's done. There's no way you can redeem yourself. It's the possibility to move forward. Or I'm just having a quick look. When you want your child to cooperate, instead of all the nagging that we so easily do, especially during mornings when we get ready to all leave the house, instead of the constant nagging, you will rather just state what you see. So if your child has left their wet towel in their room on the bed, then you can say things like, the wet towel is making the bed wet. Because that's the problem, isn't it? It's not the fact that they haven't done exactly what you want. And by explaining what the consequences are, they'll go, oh yes, I have to hang it up, because they're obviously not doing it to upset us. It's because they've got we say with all these things, it's just there's a difference between our priorities. So my priority is to keep the house tidy, get us all out on time so we can get to school and work and all those things. Their priorities is getting back to the Lego model they're building ASAP, or like my daughter building a bouncy castle with every single pillow, cushion, duvet, or whatever she can find. Yes. So it's if we say instead of it's just saying things like the Lego's all over the floor and it's hurting my feet when I'm trying to walk, or whatever, something like that.
So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we are removing the whole idea of directing it specifically at them as a person of value, and we're not going to get caught up in labeling our children. We're really shifting the focus to the action.
Or the behavior. So
yes,
you won't, how we can so easily say, stop being such a bully. You're hurting your brother, or always hurting your brother. Sorry. We can rather say, I understand you're upset because he snatched your Lego. Sorry, Lego comes up a lot in my house. I understand you're upset that he snatched your Lego, but hurting your brother is never okay. So we're validating the feelings, because we can't remove the feelings from our children. We don't want to. If they can't experience life with the whole range of feelings, they're not going to be able to live fully. So we definitely don't want to give them the idea that some feelings are not okay. I get angry at people. Sometimes at work, I find myself thinking, this woman is crazy. What is she even saying? But it's the actions that we need to control and think through. And that's what we're coaching them to do. And then you were saying about reflection. So we found that reflection, honestly, is the best way for children to learn new skills. So when things have gone well, or when things haven't gone well, by talking about it afterwards and sequencing it and looking at who did what and when and how did people feel at different points and what could have been done instead, that is the best way for children to learn. Yeah.
That's so good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because there are two things that really struck me in this last conversation, and one of them is that you did emphasize, whether it's you want to call perpetrator, the child that's initiating the poor behavior, you're still validating their feelings, and then looking to make the correction through describing the consequences that it had, and how it's not okay, and it hurt your brother or sister or whatever. So that's great. And this other last piece, which reminds me of at the end of the day, to this day, I always, at the very end of the day, I do my own discernment and reflect back to, the events of the day, or how I showed up, or how, and that could be, I showed up at a high level and very aware, and I'm, happy to say that things went the way they went, or that perhaps I fell a little short because of, for whatever reason. But I like to do, sort of a reevaluation or reflection at the end of the day. And that's always good for me. So I imagine it would be so great for kids. And if you walk them through it as you've explained, and maybe even encourage them to participate in, how they might do it differently the next time, those types of things would really drive the point home and be a great learning tool.
Right. Yes. So it just allows children to understand that it's not them that is not okay, and there's always something you can do to make it better again. So there's always something that can be done, and I think that's incredibly empowering.
Yes.
We tend to forget that we are the ones with the mature brains, where our children's brains are still developing up to the age of 25. So there's a whole lot of learning that still needs to take place, and a whole lot of figuring out and making sense of the world. And by talking things through and by explaining things to them, giving them, equipping them with our perception is very empowering.
So, I know we have not much time left on the show today, but I wanted to ask about any bedtime routines that you might encourage us to adopt.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I think, especially thinking about what you said in the beginning, bedtimes are just such a perfect time for connection. So we need to make sure we allow enough time for that. So there needs to be time to snuggle or give hugs, some time for holding hands. My daughter wants to hold my hand while she falls asleep. There has to be enough time for that. And that's then a great time to look at, what stories we need to tell. In our house, we also share our highlights and our lowlights and also our weird lights. That's something that my kids came up with. So strange things that happen. And if we leave enough time for that to happen at night, that's actually when we hear really what is going on inside them. Mm-hmm. And the perfect time then for affirmations, in my opinion. We make a point of telling our kids that we love them and that they're so important in our family, that they're significant, and they belong completely, and no matter what they do, that will never change. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you.
Conscious.
Yeah. So, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I don't know if we missed anything. I hope not. I think there's a lot of great information that came out of this, though, today. And before I close out the show, Eloise, please go ahead and let people know how they can get in touch with you, or if they have questions, how to connect with you, anything that you want to share on your end.
I think in terms of specifically what we were talking about today, there's a blog post on my website that has this set out step by step, bit by bit. So don't say this, say this. Just giving examples of scenarios. And I think, if this is something that's of interest, then that will be a good place to go. It's on www.growth&Grit.org. So that it will just give them a really good way to be able to go through it bit by bit.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone, be sure to check out growth&grit.com and check out what the work that Eloise is doing. I think there's some great tips for you there. And please be sure that you check out the I Am a Lovable Me books as well today by clicking on the link at the very end of this video. The I Am a Lovable Me book has almost 100 positive affirmations on every topic that you can imagine. And it's a great way to get your kiddos to adopt a positive internal dialogue. It's available in hardcover as well as audio iBooks. Also, you'll never miss any of our great shows by watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Sharon Penchina, and I'll be back next week with more great self-empowerment tips for you. Thank you all for joining in, and be sure that you have a fantastic day today. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Lovable Me Show. Also, if you have any questions for Lovable, go ahead and ask away. Don't forget to visit us next week, right here in the Facebook bugler.